From the land of frozen lakes, this is 10,000 Takes, brought to you by Minnesota Score Radio. Wally and Eric back for yet another year as we slice and dice the always busy, always topical, super saturated Minnesota sports scene. So it is 10K Takes television episode number 1 of 2023.
Oh boy. Yeah. And plenty to chew on as usual, including your Minnesota Vikings. You and I made the trek over to Green Bay to watch them just get demolished, and it was really over before it even started for all intents and purposes. The Vikings get the big punt block, and they get first and goal at the 1. They go backwards, and it was downhill from there, baby.
It was a tundra demolition. And how about our opening music? Bells from NFL Films. They play it at Lambeau, too.
Yeah, I heard that.
We heard the opening music to 10K Takes in Green Bay.
Yeah, it's frightening, actually. Look, I don't know if this is going to be a long-term effect because they seem to have bounced back from all of their other disastrous losses, but, you know, this is just another one. Are they playoff ready? I don't know. I do know this. You and I went into the locker room afterwards, and as much as I thought it was going to be very funeral-like in there, I don't know. I thought the guys were pretty open, and they had moved on already, and they were basically talking about, yeah, we got one more game in the regular season, but we're guaranteed home playoff game, and that's what we're focused on.
Yeah, and it was interesting that they weren't more despondent in the sense that had they won that game, and believe me, there was no way they were going to win that one based on the way Green Bay played, but going in, Philadelphia had lost.
Right.
So you could have put yourself in a position to still garner the top seed in the NFC. And you also have San Francisco in the rearview mirror for that 2 seed. And now the Vikings are the 3 seed because the 49ers beat Las Vegas in overtime. And yet Minnesota seemed to shrug it off, as you say, in that locker room. And you got to put these things in the rearview mirror quickly, especially in the NFL. But it was an opportunity missed in Green Bay last week for the Vikings. Will it cost them in the playoffs? We'll see.
Yeah. Well, they had some injuries that you have to be concerned about, certainly on the offensive line. You know, if it's going to carry over into the postseason, that's going to be a problem. If Kirk Cousins is going to throw some of those ugly interceptions like he threw, that's going to be a problem.
Well, you know, one of them a deflection.
Well, actually, 2 of them were deflected, but one of them was his fault.
Yeah, I think, and maybe the other one, the one he threw to TJ, I'd put that more on TJ Hawkinson, but nonetheless, it turned into a pick 6. Green Bay had a kickoff return for a score by Keyshawn Nixon, 105 yards to the house. Minnesota gets a punt block from Josh Metellus, and they have it first and goal at the 4, and they can't cash in with a touchdown. They only get a 3, and Green Bay then, I think, woke up and said, hey, that's a victory for us. So yeah, this is a hard team to figure out, the Minnesota Vikings. And in the NFL right now, there's a razor-thin margin between very good, mediocre, bad, and very bad. And that is not a big gap. Parity is alive and well in this league.
Yeah, well, their 4 losses have been very bad. I mean, I guess the Lions lost. They hung in there for most of the game, but the other 3, it's like they had no chance. I mean, Dallas, Green Bay, those games were lost before they started. And Philadelphia was, again, that was one that didn't look very good either. So
if you base it on those losses, when they see a good team, if they fall behind, they're not going to have these miracle comebacks and, you know, this knack for pulling it out in the last seconds or in overtime. I don't know how long that's sustainable, but I know one thing. I don't want to count them out because they seem to bounce back quickly from these blowouts.
Yeah, well, it's no wonder that they get no respect from the national media. And personally, I'm sure they don't care what the national media thinks about them.
Or what the local media thinks.
Or for that matter, what the local media thinks. But you lose a lot of respect, and you look at it and you say, gee, there's a lot of holes there that they have to fill, and then somehow they beat the Giants and they beat the Bills. I mean, they beat playoff teams. They beat Green Bay early on. They beat them badly in their opening game. So, I mean, there are some good things to point out.
Yes, no question. They're the NFC North champs.
They're 12-4.
But when you look at points for and points against, they have a negative differential. How many times has there been a 12-4 team that has scored less points than they've given up? I don't know if it's ever happened.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that that's going to get reversed. If they win, they usually win by one score or less. We have found that out. They're 11-0 in those games.
They walk the tightrope when they win games. All right, stick around. We have a Power Pack show. We'll talk hoops. Kevin Lynch. Also, Jeff Robinson will join us, longtime front office employee with the Vikings. This is 10K Takes, your purple ticket.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earring. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision, it's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
10,000 takes, and we continue along. We're going to talk some basketball now, some Timberwolves basketball. It's been, I'd like to say up and down, but it's been a lot of down with the Timberwolves.
Right now, they're not very good.
Yeah, they haven't.
There's
been
no
very
spin
good.
on that team.
No, that 6-game losing streak was ugly.
Wake me when they're over 500.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, to get some more insight on where the Timberwolves are and why they're where they are, we are joined now by Kevin Lynch, part of that Timberwolves television broadcast team, and, of course, former Gopher. Played himself in the NBA for a few years. Kevin, as you assess what has gone on with this Timberwolves team, where do you start, to use your words, on the problems that they have had and how they're going to correct them?
Well, I think one of their issues that has kind of been pretty consistent has been their rebounding, lack of rebounding and inability to keep teams off the offensive glass, so your defensive rebounding has been a problem. That's been in some of these games. That's been one of their big issues. Their turnovers has also been a problem offensively. It's just too bad that there's not just if there's just one thing that they're having a problem with, then it's a little easier to correct when you're a team like the Wolves. But it's a few different things. It's rebounding. It's sloppiness on offense. That's been a problem. Their point guard play has been a problem as well. Jordan McLaughlin has been hurt. He's always been such a positive for that team. And then D'Angelo Russell, who has played better lately and has scored some points, but he has been sloppy, and you just kind of wonder how he fits in moving forward, the future of this team. So other than the fact that these guys, once they get going, they have the ball in their hands all the time, and they take a ton of threes. There we go.
Yeah, and everybody shoots threes these days.
That gets frustrating to me. It's like this drifts down to high school basketball. It's like and playing fast. The assumption that when you play fast, you play well, or when you play fast, you're going to win. And like I've watched high school games. I went to a scrimmage about a month ago, a little over a month ago, right before the high school season started. And one of my good friends is one of the coaches of the teams that were scrimmaging. And I watched about 10 minutes of this scrimmage. And it was just a comedy of mistakes, of bad shots, quick shots, and of bad turnovers. Everything, all these mistakes were done because they were playing so fast. And the thing is kids make mistakes or take bad shots, and it doesn't bother them. It's not a problem. It's okay. But this whole thing of playing fast is such a problem for me because all it does is lead to mistakes, especially for high school kids. NBA guys, obviously they're so good. They can play fast and survive it a little bit, but you'll see the same thing at that level too. So I don't know. This whole thing of playing fast, which leads to bigger scores, right? Sometimes that's an issue for me because it doesn't mean you're playing well when you play fast.
Yeah, no question.
Obviously, let's get healthy too. That's another concern. Towns is out. He's been out for over a month now. Like I said, McLaughlin, Taurean Prince has been hurt too. So I'm going to fully wait to completely judge the Gobert trade and everything going on with this team until they've played, 30, 40, 50 games. with Gobert, with Towns. Towns is their best player. He's been out. So it's been a variety of problems that they've had in the last month or month and a half. And but to me, this is still the most talented, one of the most talented rosters the Timberwolves have ever had. And yes, I would wish that everything would have clicked right away from the get-go, but that's not the case, and it's going to take longer for them to figure out. I personally think that Towns and Gobert, two big men plan can work, and I'm going to stick by that until I give it a full season or two to completely judge. But, yeah, they've been disappointing. But hopefully they can figure it out here and get healthy.
And I respect your NBA IQ, Kevin, but the way I see it is if I'm going to give up a boatload of draft choices and gut the core of the team, I better get Giannis or Donovan Mitchell or Luka or Jason Tatum or Steph Curry. I'm not sure Rudy G's even a top 20 player in the NBA. He's very good and very effective, but I'm not sure he's elite. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I mean, yeah, you're right in the fact that most of those top 10 guys, top 20 guys are, all-around players like Antetokounmpo or Doncic or Embiid, but Rudy Gobert is a specialist, and you can be a very effective player. You can be one of the better players in this league when you're 7'1". You can be more of a specialist. If you're 6'4", if you're 6'7", completely different story. But when you're a big guy like Gobert, you can. I mean, I remember when Gobert was a rookie or a second-year player for the Jazz, and Enes Kanter, their starting big man that year, was mostly an offensive player, and so Gobert was a late first-round pick. The Jazz, he was playing his rookie year, but he was coming off the bench, and Kanter was mostly an offensive player. That's the big guy that was playing in front of Gobert. As that season went along for Rudy Gobert as a rookie, he started to get more and more minutes. And then they played the Wolves at some point that year at Target Center, and Gobert comes into the game and completely changed the game by blocking shots, altering shots, rebounding, tip dunks, all this stuff. And I had a friend that used to work for the Jazz back in those days, and he told me that midway through Gobert's rookie season, I believe, they traded Enes Kanter, the starting big man for the Jazz, took Gobert, inserted him into the starting lineup. He was already playing, but not heavy minutes. And they went from one of the bottom defensive teams to one of the top defensive teams, and it was all because of Gobert's ability, even though he's a specialist, but to rebound, to defend, to block shots. That really helped the Jazz. And, obviously that's not going to happen here with the Wolves at this point in his career, but he can have that big of effect, even though he's a specialist. So, I think this two big man route for the Timberwolves can work. It's going to take more time than we had all hoped, but I'm still jumping on the idea that they can be a good defensive team, a good rebounding team, and you don't win something big at that level unless you defend and you rebound. And I think it can come. I'm going to stick by it too, guys, so don't get angry with me.
Well, Kevin, as usual, we appreciate your insight. We will talk to you again down the road. It's still a long ways to go. It's only January. The finals are in July, so we got a long ways to go.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. He's Kevin Lynch. He's part of that Timberwolves broadcast team, of course, a former Gopher, and himself played in the NBA back in the day. Back with more after this timeout. Stay with us.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earrings. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision, it's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
Well, we all watched in horror this past Monday night as Demar Hamlin went down for the Buffalo Bills. And was brought off the field. Joining us now is Jeff Robinson, longtime member of the Minnesota Vikings front office, part of that organization. Jeff, as you watch this, and I know I've been hearing a lot of the cat calls now about the safety of the game of football. What do you think this is going to do to that discussion?
Well, obviously, the discussion is an ongoing discussion based upon safety because it's a contact game. But I think when you look at that play and then when you look at other issues that are being talked about, I don't think that you could necessarily say that that play is something that you would just put a tremendous microscope on. Now, do you always want to look at the game and talk about the things that can be done in a more safe fashion? Obviously, you do. It just, when you watch that particular play, I'm just not sure where you could see a lot of things that could be done differently to prevent what happened. And really, nobody knows at this point what actually happened to him. I mean, obviously, we know the result, but we don't know exactly what happened. To say for sure what caused the end result. So I think you always have to pay close attention to the things that go on in contact sports, and it's not just football or hockey, but the collision that you saw last night, you see those plays happen in sports like soccer or lacrosse. You see these things happen all the time, and I think obviously you have to put a microscope on football because it is a contact sport, but a lot of the things that happen are just things that could happen, in any part of life to anybody. So you work with the technological aspects of things, and you always try to improve the rules and apply those things together and hope that the outcomes are more safe overall. But when you're talking about games that are violent, or there's collisions that can happen, then obviously you don't like for these things to happen and you don't want these things to happen. But the risk is always there. And, that's why teams have such big staffs as far as trainers and doctors go, and why they take such precautions as far as the medical advancements and the medical issues that are relevant to these games, because these things, again, you don't want them to happen, but that there is a possibility that they could. Unfortunately, in Minnesota, we experienced something like that when Corey Stringer died, and the setting was different, but the issue is the same. You lose a member of your team, right during the middle of practice. I mean, it was the end of practice, but it was still practice. And so, everybody talks about how you're a family and, how you spend more time, with your teammates and your coaches than you do with your actual family during the season. And all these things apply. And when you lose somebody or when somebody goes down, it really does have a tremendous adverse effect physically and mentally, because it's hard to instantly take that picture out of your mind. And for me, I can still vividly see when that happened with Corey in Mankato. So I totally understand what people are talking about when it pertains to not only Buffalo but Cincinnati, as far as the toll that it could take as far as going forward, not just on individuals, but on these teams as a whole. So, there's a lot of talking points that people can undertake at this point, and obviously you want to undertake these things and try to improve on the game always, but you also have to take into account, okay, were we doing everything that we possibly could do to prevent what happened? And you have to give, again, kudos to the medical staffs, the EMTs that were available, because, if not for the things that they do on a daily basis, I mean, who knows what we could be talking about right now. Even though we are talking about something bad, who knows what we really could be talking about.
JR, it was once said that in the Department of Human Affairs, sports is the toy department. But every once in a while, the real world intersects with the toy department. You referenced Corey Stringer back in 2001. a tragedy, and then what we saw Monday night in Cincinnati, catastrophic. How does that affect the psyche of Buffalo, of Cincinnati? And you were there in Minnesota when the Vikings went through it, and that was a very bad season on the field. It was Denny Green's last year with the Vikings. I don't think they ever recovered. I don't think the Timberwolves ever recovered when they lost their head coach Flip Saunders days before the regular season a few years ago. How does Buffalo and Cincinnati turn the page? Because these games eventually will go on.
Yeah, they will. And the sad part, of course, is the fact that tomorrow is the start of the work week for next week's games. And, your teammate is still laying in a hospital bed, not even in the same city, if you're talking about Buffalo. And so it really does have a traumatic effect. I think back again to Corey's situation and the effect that it had on our team. And you're right, things were never the same that whole year, because you're always going back to that particular incident, when you're trying to build the foundation of what your team is about. And, for those two teams that was a game for first place. And, now they're not only trying to figure out, how to practice and get ready for the next games, but they're also trying to figure out, A, how is our teammate doing? And B, how do we recover, mentally and physically? Because not only do you lose a friend and a teammate, but you also lose a key member of your team on the field. And that's not easy to replace. And unfortunately, you don't really have time to do it.
Jeff, you've watched the Vikings closely. They have had 4 really bad games. I mean, I don't even think that there's any question. The 4 losses have all been ugly, with maybe the possible exception of the Lions game. 12 wins, though. Is this team ready and or capable of making a postseason run in your mind?
I think the biggest thing that you have to pay attention to right now is the health of the team going forward. Obviously they've suffered some big losses on their offensive line the last few weeks, and that's really important. The health of their cornerbacks is really important, and the health of Eric Kendricks is really important, as far as his hip goes, as they get ready for the playoffs. So if all is healthy enough to play, which obviously that's doubtful, starting with Brian O'Neill at right tackle, then they have a chance. And, you want to get a home game so that you can get the crowd involved, and that always helps for you to gain momentum going forward. And I think those are the big keys. The reality is, once you get in, like everybody says, then it's anybody's game, and they are in. So they definitely have a chance. They, the things and the reasons that they've lost in a lot of these situations have been, similar to the reasons that they won all these games by, 7 points or less. It's a lot of the, turnovers and big penalties and big play type of issues, which those are the things that you can correct. So when you know that what your mistakes are, and you've also beaten quality teams like they have, beating Buffalo in Buffalo is no easy task for any team at any time of year in any year. So they know that they can win against anybody. They just have to have the mindset of, we're in this thing, so let's go win it.
JR, we have just a few seconds left. Any chance Justin Jefferson is the MVP?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
You'd like to say that a receiver has a chance to do it, but normally you're going to give it to the guy who's throwing it to the receiver.
Yeah, it's kind of like same with the Heisman, right? It's a quarterback trophy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Pretty much.
Thanks, JR.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. He is Jeff
Take
Robinson, formerly with the Minnesota Vikings front office, joining us here on 10,000 Takes, back with takes of the day after this timeout. Stay with us.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earring. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision, it's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
10K Takes on television, episode number 1 of 2023. Wally and Eric with you. Takes of the day coming up shortly, but we should talk about the Minnesota Wild, who certainly finished 2022 on a hot note. They got a New Year's Eve win in St. Louis. And the Wild, of course, don't have a lot of success against the Blues. They've been kryptonite against Minnesota in recent history, but that's a good win for the Wild as they enter the new year.
Yeah, well, they entered the new year with a win over St. Louis, but they started the new year in 2022 with a loss to St. Louis. So maybe that's the revenge that they so needed.
Minus 5 degrees at the Winter Classic at trendy Target Field.
Are you still a Winter Classic guy? I'm losing interest in that.
It's all right. I know it was at Fenway this year. Penguins, Bruins. Next year, though, I'm all in. It's the Vegas Golden Knights and the Seattle Kraken.
Where?
At T-Mobile Park, the Mariners' home.
Okay. All right. Should be interesting.
Yeah. Tune in.
Yes.
So anyways, the Wild, I think they're a good team. Potentially could be a very good team. I'm still waiting for Colorado to wake up, though. The reigning Stanley Cup champs are probably going to get hot here in this second half of the season.
I would tend to agree. All right, we better do takes of the day.
All right. So new year, I know you've made some resolutions. You're going to try to be more cheerful and optimistic.
Yep.
Will that hold true with the mood meter on your take of the day? Are you going to be a happy camper or a grumpy guardian?
Well, I've got a mixed bag for you, and they're both Gopher related. We'll start out with Gopher football. We'll start out with the positive. As you know, your Gopher football team went to New York City and won the Pinstripe Bowl. They beat Syracuse. That is now their 6th straight win in a bowl game. Did you know that is now an all-time Big Ten record for win streaks in bowl games? Minnesota has it.
Wow.
They have won 6 in a row. Now, mind you, a lot of those are minor bowl games.
Yeah, none of those games were played in Pasadena, Miami, New Orleans, any of those cities.
No,
major bowls.
Not really. But what the heck? 6 wins in a row is 6 wins in a row. Congratulations to Coach Fleck on getting 6 in a row. Now the flip side. Oh, by the way, that's also a Big Ten. I said Big Ten record, but it's also the longest streak in all of college football right now.
Watch out, USC and UCLA. You don't know what you're getting into.
Just thought I'd mention it. They are bowl happy. All right. Flip side. Gopher men's hockey. Now, they've been one of the top teams in the country this year. Bob Motzko's got them rolling, and it's good. It's good to see Gopher hockey back on top. Now they need to fill the building up again. But this news just came up. They are no longer going to play St. Cloud State. They have declined the option to play the Huskies going forward after this weekend. They've got them this weekend, the home and home. One game in St. Cloud at the Herb, and the other one at Mariucci. Going forward, though, Coach Motzko, the former St. Cloud State coach, says not so much. I don't think Herb Brooks would be very happy with that. Herbie got the whole thing rolling for just that reason, to play those games.
Mood meter says you're a giddy Gopher and a grumpy Gopher all mixed into one. And yeah, with gas prices forecasted to go up in 2023, you'd think you'd want to keep that I-94 rivalry with St. Cloud.
Yeah, come on, Bob. You got to get on board with this. That's silly.
All right, well, my take of the day, I went to Lambeau Field twice in a 2-week span for a Monday night game against LA Rams, Green Bay Packers. Then you or I were there Sunday. Last week, Minnesota Vikings, Green Bay Packers. I just want to say it's always great to spend an NFL Sunday or Monday in Titletown watching the NFL play the way it should be. Natural grass, the tundra, if you will, open air, tailgating, all that history, that Packer pedigree. Even if you don't cheer for the Green Bay Packers, that stadium, Lambeau Field, is an NFL cathedral. I recommend anybody who's an NFL fan to see at least one game in Green Bay. And on that note, let's FedEx out our thank yous. One to Alex Yambrick, David Weld, also to Rocky, Kevin Lynch, and Jeff Robinson. For Wally, I'm Eric saying so long. This is 10K Takes, your sports ticket.